Now for A10, we're going to return to the employee database application. And I want you to make it crash proof, or as much as you can crash proof, by using both look before you leap and easy to ask for forgiveness and permission. So both types. I want to see some try and catch in there, and I want to see some value checking or data checking before you convert things. So the obvious places where you're going to want to do error handling, okay? These are big four right here. First, getting user input. When you get user input, you want to check it. When you're doing a calculation, which would include converting data types or doing any kind of calculation, that's a good time to check your data or to put some error handling around it. Both ways work for most of these. You can figure out how to use try and catch or look before you leap for most of these. So I'm going to leave it to you to decide which one to put where. When you add things to a list or refer to a list, that's a good time. And then when you're saving or retrieving data, as in with a file or a database or something like that, which we haven't done yet, but again, you will be doing that soon. So those are the big four areas where I would recommend looking for input. So if we take a look at my fruit stand, now, funny thing about this is a significant number of people turned in fruit stand assignments instead of employee databases. Go figure. Who would have saw that coming? Me. I did. Because it happens every semester. People are like, oh, you did a fruit stand? I'm going to do a fruit stand. Nope. Fruit stand is for me. Employee database is for you. But, okay, so if we're doing this here, right, we want to make sure that each one of these strings that they enter has data in it before we add it to the database, right? Because especially if the ID is empty, if we have an empty ID, we're kind of screwed because that's our main key for referring to a record in that database or in that data dictionary that we have. Now here, I'm converting to a float. That's a good place to think about something like that. Now, we're already doing a little bit of look before you leap here, right? Because if I don't check to make sure that the ID exists in that database and I try to refer to that ID to remove it, I'm going to get an error. So there's a little bit of that there. There's not a whole bunch in list fruit. A lot of it is going to be in the data entry here. But you can easily add a look before you leap and a easier to ask for permission or forgiveness than permission here. So, if I'm just trying, now the interesting thing here is that I still need to have a price, right? If I do try and accept here, if I just print, you have to enter a number, right? Need to enter a number. Okay, but what happens? What happens if they enter something that's not a number here? They're going to get an error in this part. And nothing will be put into FL price right here. But it's going to keep going. And then right here, it's going to try and put FL price in this spot. And you can see here, PyCharm is highlighting that FL price in orange because what it's telling me is that variable might not be assigned. It might not exist. So if I enter a bad number there, I get the printout that says you entered a bad number, but then it's going to come here and it's going to crash hard because that variable didn't exist now because it wasn't created because of the error in that try. So if I want to be really, really solid there, we can go back to our tried and true strategy of putting that in a while true and setting it up like this. And now we're holding the user hostage here until they give us a number that works. It'll just keep saying, you need to enter a number. What is the price? You need to enter a number. What is, until you give me a price that works and doesn't generate an error, and then it breaks. And it'll go, and then it goes to the next one. So you've got to be mindful about what happens in a try and catch. For example, that this variable won't be created if we don't put something there. Now, another way to do that I don't like as much is if I don't put it in the while loop and I don't use break, what I could do is I could just give that variable an arbitrary value in the accept. So I could say FL price equals 50 cents. Now, no matter what, either the user will enter a valid number, or it'll say you need to enter a number, and then it'll assign the price at 50 cents. In my program as it stands right now, I don't have a way of changing that though. So it's kind of a pain. It's not really the best solution. There might be other ones where just putting sort of a default value, if the user messes up, would work okay. But most of the time, you want to make the user enter the right thing, and then you move on with the rest of the program. So there's a lot of different ways to do things, as always. And also, if I was going to do the arbitrary price, I would probably print something to that effect here. I'd say you need to enter a number. I'm setting the price at 50 cents for you because you can't seem to enter a number on your own or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and you need to think about like what makes sense for the program and whatever. But when you leave this section of the code, FL price has to be defined because you're going to cruise straight through to here. And if it's not defined by then your program crashes again. I mean, you could put a try and catch here as well, right? And you could say, oh, in case that doesn't get defined, then you could say, I don't have all the data I need. I can't put the record in. But don't you think that would piss you off if you're sitting here trying to enter fruit and you enter all these things, you enter the ID, the name, the price, how many there are, and then you get to the place where it's supposed to enter it, and it's like, oops, my bad, and you have to go back and redo it all. That's not fun for users. So you're trying to protect the user from themselves as much as possible. So if they can't enter a number, you just keep asking them for that one thing, and then you move on. And that's sort of a better way of doing things because then you're not anything that requires you. And I don't know if you've had this experience before. It's becoming less and less common. It used to happen all the time where you're doing something on a website like a registration or something like that, and you go through all these fields and then it does something weird and you get this error and you're like, okay, I'll just go back and fix that, and it's like everything's blank, and it's just like, it's the worst feeling. It really is. It's sort of like if you get halfway done with your essay for English class and your computer crashes and you didn't save it, and then that first version 1.0 was going to be like your work that you were going to become famous for. It was that good, and then the second one's just like, I poured all my creative juices into that first version. I got nothing left. So yeah, you don't want to do that to your users because that's a bad feeling. And you want people to feel happy when they're using your program, not angry. So that is assignment 10 or module 10 is just come in, use the code you've already done and upgrade it with a little bit more stuff. I want to see at least one try and accept and at least one look before you leap example. Most of you have been doing look before you leap, so it's really just going to come down to try and accept. But I'm going to look for downstream problems like the one I just described if you're for your try and accept. So you want to make sure you set that up and think that through and test it. Always test your code.
So look before you leap, the one that restarts it basically over and over.
And either one could do that. You could put either one of those in a loop, depending on how you do it. Look before you leap just says, I'm going to check to make sure this data is right before I try to do the conversion or the calculation or whatever.
I did do that for my A10.
Yeah, just think about, like, if you're playing, just think about crossing the street. Look before you leap is basically crossing the street.
I did that for my A10 without realizing I did.
Yeah, well, that's good. You're just a natural, I guess.
There you go.
All right, so error handling natural over here. All right, so that's the assignment. And hopefully, that should be really quick for you. Like I said, if you find yourself spending a bunch of time on this using code that you've already done, then something went weird somewhere. Like either you're on a side quest or you got yourself confused or you broke something. That's when it's good to ask for help. And also, this is sort of, we're kind of like halfway through the class right now in terms of our modules. Next week is week 8 of the semester, so we're about halfway through the semester in terms of weeks too. But this is a place where a lot of people have a chance to catch up with stuff. This module and module 11 are quick, as long as you've completed the stuff coming up to that. So if you're a little behind, now's the time to get a little bit caught up, because as we move into 12 and 13, we're going to start covering bigger new concepts again and start writing fresh code and things like that. So we want to be kind of like, this is a good time to get caught up. Okay. So anyhow, that's it for today. And speaking of getting caught up, you've got almost an hour, 45 minutes or so